Welcome to the Grit Behind the Grind podcast, where we dive deep into raw, unfiltered journey of entrepreneurship, fitness, mental health, and building businesses from the ground up. I'm Eric Rowell, co-founder of Grit and Grind Coffee, real estate developer, fitness enthusiast, dad, and husband.
And I'm Destiny Rowell, co-founder of Grit and Grind Coffee, creative, brand strategist, and above all, mom and wife, bringing you real talk on what it takes to thrive as a business owner, especially when you're doing it alongside your partner. Here, we don't just focus on the wins. We dig deep into the struggles, the sacrifices, and the daily grind that it takes to make it all possible. So tune in, subscribe, and get ready to uncover the grit behind the grind.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Grit Behind the Grind podcast. You have me and Destiny and one of our really good friends, Scott. So we're fixing to jump in here. I think this is going to be a lot of great information for anybody who is in business, looking to get started in business. So yeah, hopefully we can leave you with some golden nuggets today.
Scott was one of the ones that whenever we started going through our business, I was like, we have to reach out to him. He's just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm going to let him share what he does and how he's able to serve people. But I think that this podcast is going to help so many, and it's going to be replayed a ton of times by me personally too, because I know I'm going to pull tons of nuggets from it. So I cannot wait to get started. Take it away, Scott. Tell us what you do.
Thank you, you guys. And I have to tell you, I love the podcast name. It's really cool. Mm-hmm. Well, your business name is really cool. So I guess it's a play on that. But yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And it's just been a blast getting to know you guys over the last 2 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. And watching you grow. I think I remember the very first conversation I had with you, where I was sitting, the room I was in. I remember my wife was with me, and we're like, "Ooh, we really like those people, and we really like their coffee thing." What you guys do what you do really well, which is really fun. But yeah, I run an agency that provides staffing, remote staffing for business owners, and so. Really what we do is we solve problems. You know, any good business solves problems. You guys with coffee solve people's energy problems, and I solve people's chaos problems, I think is kind of one way that I would put it, because when people build businesses, they usually start as solopreneur or as a couple, and they basically do everything themselves. And so we're positioned to help them bring in remote staffing and efficiently and affordably create systems and processes so that they're not doing everything. You know, you hear the story about spinning plates. I don't know if you've heard that, but as a business owner, you can run from that stick and spin it, and that plate is sitting on top. And if you've ever seen that trick, but as soon as you get like multiple plates going, they start to wobble, and you're running back and forth, and you lose control. And we're the company that helps people get more hands to spin those plates, so that the owner isn't doing it all.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because, just like you said, you usually kind of start something because you have a passion about, something. And then it's like, okay, let me turn this into a business. And you have no real kind of understanding of what it takes to run a business, which is teams, right? You got to have people in an organization, and you really don't know. It's like you go 5 steps forward, and then you got to backtrack and then fill in the gaps and learn new things. And we were the same way, honestly, when we met you and we started plugging ourselves into other entrepreneurs and getting around business owners. It's like, hey, I didn't know that I needed this in my organization. I bring it on, and it's like, oh my gosh, that freed up so much bandwidth, Mm-hmm. So
at the very beginning of our coffee journey, when we started all of this, we didn't know what we were doing. Like, Eric still had his real corporate job. I was like, we opened on a Monday, and Tuesday I was like, are we going back to work tomorrow, or are we opening a coffee trailer? Because it was such a good success. And I was like, we've got to figure this out. And you just get thrown into all these positions, and you wear all these hats, marketing, and then you're your own bookkeeper. But at the same time, everyone always asks, like, how in the world did you scale so quickly? And I never had a word for it until I met you, Scott, but it was systematizing, creating SOPs, creating systems and processes for the things that we did every day. We woke up and opened the trailer. Okay, we wrote a checklist. Okay, turn the lights on, turn the generator on. If the generator doesn't turn on, what do you do? And that really was our secret sauce to scaling. We didn't really get stuck in our business too much because out the gate, Eric's background is in adult education. So he had a little bit of that behind him, training. I was actually a teacher right when COVID hit. So I got thrown into virtual learning like super fast. And so all these little nuggets that we didn't know, these tools that we didn't realize we would use again in a new career field, we had, and we just put those into play, which was really cool. But that brings me to the point of having those systems, having those SOPs and everything ready to go was allowed us to be able for that next step, which is a lot of words, the word people don't like to talk about, and that is delegation. But that just happens to be kind of your sweet spot, your bread and butter, right?
Correct. Correct. And, I want anybody who's listening to go back and rewind a little bit to Destiny saying, like, we just wrote everything down, created checklists. And Destiny, I think you know this, and I remember this about you the first time, the first weekend, you told me, oh, I'm really good at creating SOPs and writing things down. We're really good at that. I've never heard somebody say that before. Like, I thought I was like this unique unicorn. But the truth is you and I really are kind of unicorns, because it just, for me, it came natural. I've always created systems for myself. And so when a reader or listener hears that, they may be like, what the heck? Like, who does that? So I want to identify, like, that's not the norm. The norm is to just do the things, and it all lives in your head. Mm-hmm. And so the first step, really, well, it's not the first step. The first step is admitting that, one, as an entrepreneur, just because you created it doesn't mean you're the best at it. This is something that so many people don't understand or don't want to understand. And it was something that held me back for many, many years. I've owned businesses for 21 years. And I always had this self-identified as the problem solver. Like, I'm going to fix that problem, and I'm going to fix it fast. And then I always identified as the, like, jack of all trades, which actually is a really good thing to understand how to do a lot of things. And so I was ingrained in that identity on myself. And so just because I knew how to do it doesn't mean I wanted other people to do it. I wanted to be that fixer. I wanted to be the hero in this story. Everybody wants to be a hero in the story. And so it's just a really unique way that entrepreneurs are wired and then also created, is you do everything. And we just think, well, I do it. No one else can do it as good as me, and there's no way for me to transfer. I want any listener to really identify with this if you can. There's no way for me to transfer for how I do something to someone else so that they can do it as good as me. Because you think there's so many intangibles and there's so many variables, and it depends on the client, and it depends on the coffee that we're mixing, and it depends on my machine's a little different than this machine over here. And so those are all lies we tell ourselves, because we, as entrepreneurs, we've created this identity based on creating. Yeah. And it's our own worst enemy.
Yeah. And I look back, and a lot of entrepreneurs, I bet you if you sat us down we sit down a lot at a table, but a lot of this is rooted from probably childhood trauma. I had a chaotic childhood. So when I grew up, I was like, I'm making my own security, my own routine that I know I'm in control of, so that all these variables, I don't have to wake up and guess if there's going to be water or lights. Like, I know. And so it's a part of that controlling the process, but also systematizing everything so that it's guaranteed the way we want it to work every single time. And it is unwiring, bad habits, generational curses, bondage, all those things that are all balled up in this little entrepreneur. Everyone wants to, have that 24-hour, 7-day a week, do whatever you want to do. But that we're all kind of broken in a good way. I guess we've used it.
I think so. I actually had my executive coach last week. He said, there's a reason you're so organized, and there's a reason you do what you do. And he goes, a lot of it probably goes back to your childhood. I was like, oh, I don't know that I want to go there.
I know.
But the beautiful thing is Dan Sullivan, he's an amazing entrepreneurial coach, talks about the being anti-fragile. And so here's kind of the message I want to tell people, because we do have a lot of trauma and it does dictate how we operate in our business. And it probably has a lot of wrappings around being in control, chaos. A lot of people are addicted to chaos. He says being anti-fragile, everyone talks about resiliency. Well, resiliency is where you don't, nothing affects you. Like, so, you know, a customer or a client sends a bad review. Okay, whatever, that's a thing, I'm moving on. It doesn't affect you. Well, being anti-fragile is a skill set that you take that and you grow from something every single time. So you're not just resilient, you're anti-fragile. And so the beauty of being anti-fragile is that you can then go back. Let's get deep here. You can then go back and all of your childhood memories and all of the things that are traumatizing to you and recreate that narrative and use that to become better. And that's the difference between a victim and a victor, is when you become anti-fragile, you're like, yes, that happened to me, but here's what it did for me. And so, wow, we just went in a totally different realm.
I love it. Mic drop, we're done.
Yeah. The cool thing is that's exactly who me and Destiny are. You know, as far as we want to shed a little bit of light and help other people. And sometimes that looks like, hey, let's give a business nugget here, but hey, let's also give a personal development nugget here, right? So that wraps around in our identity and what we are trying to put out in the world.
Yeah.
Well, a successful business is ultimately a successful person growing in life. If your internals are not aligned and growing, your business is going to suck. I mean, it is what it is, you know.
I wanted to talk about, we were talking about going into delegation, and you're right. This personal growth is so intertwined with how we handle things in our business. And so I've seen, because this is what I do for a living, is I talk to business owners and I'm like, wow, like, let's get this area of your life in control. Let's hire you for you guys, an executive assistant, someone that can pull the levers, make decisions, keep you on track, really be your gatekeeper, all these things. Or maybe it's just like a billing. You wouldn't believe how many people don't bill normally. They don't do their AR. And I'm like, well, that's money left on the table. Hire someone to do that every day. Collect your money. Like, we're talking about, I just talked to a guy yesterday whose revenue is $12,000 a month, and he's like, oh, I have $12,000 sitting out there in AR. I just don't have the time to pull the levers. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to yeah. Those months of past due things. But so when we talk about delegation and we talk about systemizing, there's so many levels involved in that. And the biggest issue is that people they're just stuck. They're stuck and they don't know how to move forward. And so I see two big things that happen. Entrepreneurs who are living in their own chaos, they are literally capping their business. So they're I call it pulling levers. They're pulling levers all day. Then they're going home and they're doing invoicing, and then they're doing customer responses, and they hire somebody, but they only give them a little leeway. They're like, I'm going to hold on to your shirt here and keep you from actually really getting steam and really helping me. There's those people. And then there's those people who hear from gurus to say you need to delegate and hire people. And this is where I never want to be as a VA agency, someone that people are like, Scott says just hire and everything will be fixed and you can scale, because that's the message that goes out. No, there's a very big process for this. So there's the other entrepreneur who's like in chaos and then just starts throwing people at the problem. And they hear that the best life in the world is the 4-hour work week, and they unplug and they're like, I just hired 8 people. They're doing the things, and they weren't ready for it because of exactly what you said. Personal growth that wasn't there. They're not growing through this. So they're seeing this problem, and this is how this guy fixed it. So I'm just throwing it without going through the process. And my process was long. People are like, well, how'd you get started with VAs and why did you do that? Well, when I first started with VAs, for like the first year and a half, is a very different story than how it works for me now. Because I was 20 or in the teens of years running businesses where I was the stopgap and everything.
Yeah. So I want to get a little personal with it. So what was some struggles that specifically you had when you first started delegating, maybe in that infant stage of your entrepreneurship?
So I started with things that I knew very well, which actually was pretty brilliant. So what it's innate because I was a teacher for many years. So I'm good at teaching. So I thought I know these things really well. I'm going to take those and give it to this person because I can create a loom and then we can create an SOP. And I know I'm talking nerdy here, but and then they can execute. And so I did that. But because I was addicted to this work, at the time when I first started with VAs, I was contracting for a fitness brand. I helped them grow a lot. And so I came in kind of as an integrator and just learned and did and developed systems and processes and was basically doing a lot of the business on the delivery side. And so I hired the first VA, and she started working. I got her up to 40 hours a week within a couple weeks because was doing so much. But looking back now, you know how much work I was still doing when she was working 40 hours a week? I was still working 60 to 80 hours a week.
Yep.
So all I did was I had this big list of things I knew would improve the company I was working for. And so I just started taking those on. And the thing is, Destiny, about 3 months in, I had 3 full-time VAs. And they were all doing full-time work, delivering deliverables for that contract, doing reports, improving systems, and I'm still working 60 to 80 hours a week. This is something I see with our clients all the time. And
Guilty. Yep.
yeah.
Raise your hand if you feel attacked right now.
I was going to say raise both of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it took me a long time to figure it out. So I kept doing that. And then I had a VA agency basically built from solving my own problems. Like, wait, I have these amazing people. I need to offer this to other people. When I left that fitness position, I had 3 full-time VAs and myself. And to talk about the productivity that we were establishing, they hired 5 full-time people when I left to replace me. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking back. Just a couple of months later, the business is doing well. The VA agency is doing well. And I have a business partner and we hired a manager and things were systemized and working great. I was just kind of like putting out fires. That was my job, which is the worst thing. It's the worst thing to do in a job. But I started to realize, I'm like, I created my own problem. I'm here solving people's problems, which is getting things done, helping them leverage other people. And I sat in my own problem and it just exacerbated it by continually adding more and more onto my plate. And what I realized was that I was doing exactly the same thing I did, just in a different way, back in the early 2000s when I had my first business. Is I would work 80 to 100 hours a week. I was also a teacher. So between my business and teaching, I was working from 4 a.m. to about 9 p.m. every single day. And then the weekends I was off with clients it was bike shops. So I was doing guided rides and doing all these things. And what happened was I actually closed that business down to a massive loss because I looked at my wife and I'm like, I am a horrible husband. I'm a horrible father, and I've lost track of what's important to me. And
Wow.
And so then I go fast forward to, like 5-6 years ago, I'm like, I just recreated that same thing for myself and I've done it over and over again. New business, get it started. And in the name of providing for my family, I'm working way too many hours and I'm not living as the father and husband I should be.
And that is completely opposite of what people think that they desire. You have a conversation with somebody and it's like, hey, I want to be my own boss, right? Well, why do you want to be your own boss? Well,
Yeah.
I want freedom and I want to go on vacations and hang out with my family. But then you look at 90% of entrepreneurs that are running their own business, and it's exactly what you just described. It's night and day difference.
Yeah. And Destiny nailed it earlier, is good entrepreneurs are people who grow personally as their business grows, because their business typically will cap out if they're not continually pursuing growth. And so this is my own struggle with delegation. This was my own noose around my neck that I kept tightening. Is like, hey, I'm just getting more and more productive because I valued productivity. And so then I had somebody introduce to me EHR, earned hourly rate. He's like, Scott, you work so much, but then you go and mow your lawn on the weekends. I'm like, yeah, I can't afford somebody to mow my lawn. And he said, well, how much do you make per hour? I'm like, oh, and I gave a stupid number. He's like, no. How many hours do you work divided by the money that you're bringing in? Like real hours. When you sit at the TV at night with your family doing family time and you're responding to emails and you're creating spreadsheets, that's work time. And I was like, the reality for me was at $30 an hour, I could get somebody to mow my lawn. I was making less than $30 an hour, and I was bringing home a pretty decent income at that point. And that was like a slap across my face. And this guy said, hey, look, here's what what you should do is you should track that all the time. And your endless goal is to increase your earned hourly rate from here on out. Always be increasing it. So all of a sudden, I'm like, my time needs to be more valuable as I gain knowledge and skill set.
Yeah.
How do I do that? Is I bring in value-based, high-quality staffing that helps me scale in my own way. Scale's overused, but scale in my own way, scale my EHR. And so that was the game I had to play with myself to teach myself that my time was more valuable than just being the fix-it guy. And that was a real interesting experience for me. And I'll tell you what, when I hired my first lawn service, that was like, I felt like a king. That was crazy. I felt like just like I had just conquered the world. So that's what turned the page for me.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like you don't realize how things work until you actually see them. And that's really why I wanted to kind of bring you on, because I feel like you articulate that very well. And some of our people that are listeners, we have a really good following in the mobile coffee industry. And what that looks like is a lot of people that are just really getting started. They're infants. This might be their first business. It's a side business, right? And when we first got started, a few years ago, there was a gap of information on how to get started. So I believe that we've brought all that information together and we have a really good resource center that says, hey, this is how you get started. But now, all of the people that we helped get started over the past few years, it's like, how do we help them get to the next level, right? So this is exactly what helped us. And we was like, you know what? Because we're not somebody who's just having a conversation here with Scott. I mean, to be fully transparent, we have 2 VAs. Both of those VAs help us run our companies, and they are provided by Scott. So we have vetted, we use this, and when you go and learn something or you go and have something in your life that moves the needle so much, you want to share that with other people, right? And, I think that it's so crucial to have that personal development mindset that says, hey, I don't have to be this person. And there are other options out there, and us shedding light on what some of those options look like VAs or even mastermind consultant. You just said that you had a executive coach, all of those things where we were the same. We said, I can't afford that. But then you start spending money on it and you figure out that it just increases your revenue by learning these hacks and being in these rooms. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to share this with the world.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love stories. So I always tell my own story, but what I've been able to do is help other business owners recreate that story. So I tell my story kind of to tell like 20, 30 stories, right? Hundreds of stories, whatever it might be. So my story is I have a VA agency I've owned for quite a while. And I did a really good job of delegating in there. Right now, I spend 15 to 20 minutes a week on that business, and it pays me every month. It's great. With Hire VP, when I first started this process, I clicked that switch in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to create this entire process. I'm going to deliver on this entire process, but I'm going to bring someone on early. So I brought on a girl named Chloe. She's from the Philippines. And, I was interviewing and I'm like, wow, I really like this girl. I was interviewing her for someone else. I'm like, hey, would you be interested in a different type of role? And yeah, and she said, sure. And so I hired her and she came on and learned. I said, you're just going to shadow me in everything. And then when you feel confident with one thing, I want you to look at all my emails, read all my responses. I want you to be on every Zoom meeting I'm in. I want you to just shadow me everything. She lived in my life day to day for a week. And then she's like, hey, I want to start answering this email. Okay, shoot me a response, what you would say. And then I was like, holy cow, that's really good. That's better than I could articulate it. And so she started taking emails and then she started taking processes of the hiring. And then she started a little bit. And then I got to a point where I was like, she seems pretty stressed out. Hey, Chloe, how many hours a week are you working? She's like, well, I kind of, 50, 60. I'm like, hey, like, that's not okay. I want you to find and we did SOPs from the very start. And so guess how many of those SOPs I wrote, you guys?
Hopefully.
0.
That's
Wow.
awesome. Let's go.
I taught her how to write SOPs. I recorded looms. I had her record herself and create SOPs. So I said, I want you to look at all the SOPs, decide on a list of things that you don't like in those SOPs. We'll create a job description. We'll hire someone for you. Okay. This is 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. She has now hired 15 full-time people. And so she is running that business on the Philippines side. Fulfillment, the recruitment, all of the stages, and I have one person in the U.S. who does my customer experience, and then I have a sales guy from the U.S., and then I have a social media guy that runs my social media team from the Philippines as well. And so I tell that story because what I did is I systemized myself out of a lot of the jobs that I didn't enjoy that were important for this. What do I do now for Hire VP is I talk to amazing people like you. Like that's what I get to do, what gives me the very most energy every single day. And so I want to paint that picture because not everybody's busy. You cannot have someone from the Philippines or another country pulling on the lever or pushing the button for that cappuccino. You just can't do it. You can't have them grinding coffee. You can't have them setting up the trailer. We all know that. But anything that's not boots on the ground, my goodness, that should be delegated to someone who has the skill set and has the desire and the work ethic that is really hard to find in the US right now.
Yes.
Outside of us entrepreneurs, it's really hard to find. So what does that look like? It looks like when you come up with you guys, because you guys develop the recipes. When you come up with a new recipe, maybe you pass that on to someone who is actually a graphic designer or has the skill and the time set to do that, right? And so it's billing, it's social media management, replying to clients on Google reviews so that you just engage, all these things that you can do in your have done in your business that improve your business, but that you just think aren't taking a lot of your time. And so we had a client come in 6 months ago and I'm like, he's going to need one or two. We started with an executive assistant for him. He has a big business in New York City. And he called me. They have 15 VAs right now. He called me 2 weeks ago. He said, this is a problem for a visionary. I said, well, what's a problem for a visionary? He's like, when I first hired Leanne, I don't do any of the things anymore that I was doing. None of them. She is doing them and delegating them to our VA team. He's like, all I do is big problem and big thinking. He's like, that's the problem. I've started 5 more companies since she started.
God. See, that would be us.
I was gonna say, who does that remind me of? It reminds me of you guys. But that's opportunity for him, right?
Yeah.
And so we have these clients building out systems so effectively that they're able to do the things that they like more and realize that there was a lot of things they were doing that really zapped their energy. And I love seeing that. I love seeing entrepreneurs who are putting their heart and soul into providing a service for somebody. I mean, They love to put a coffee in front of somebody and watch their face when they take that first drink. They love to start people's day with energy. They love to have some new, concoction that they're putting out. And people are like, this is the best thing ever. You get to be a hero like hundreds of times a day. People love that. But what they forget and what they get wrapped up in is there's a bunch of other stuff that they have to do that's really stealing that joy from them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to go, sorry, Eric, while I got it in my brain, because I had to have this massive mindset shift. And what that looked like was we are wired to serve. And especially as entrepreneurs or problem solvers, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to serve people. And that's just how we were created, I believe. And so the mindset shift that I had was when I'm trying to do all these things that I don't like to do, that is actually hard for me to do, I am stealing that from someone else who was created for that specific task, that gift, that talent that they were God given. And so that's not really fair of me that it takes so much freaking effort for me to do. And I do it at 70% and then it aggravates me because I want to do it at 110. But here, someone else's that they were literally created to for that specific gift and talent. When I had that kind of eye opening, I was like, that's not fair. Here I am, like holding all the balls and not letting no one else play the game. And just like you said, like you hired Chloe, and then she took the things that maybe she didn't enjoy doing. She hired 15 more people. Like that is 15 more people that you get to give a purpose to every day. If that doesn't open your eyes, then you need to kind of come back and have a come to Jesus with that, because it'll change your entire perspective, I believe.
Yeah, I think that, when you think about it and it's like virtual professionals, it's like, what does that really look like? I mean, for a lot of our audience that's starting out in a coffee business, Scott hit a nail on the head. We genuinely enjoy giving people high fives and having conversations and making them smile and then giving them that cup of caffeine. You know what we don't like doing? Spreadsheets, bookkeeping, sending out and responding to all the messages that come in on our website. And, how do we delegate? I mean, how do we fix all of those issues? It's like, okay, that back end, business side of things, I could literally get all of those things out of my plate and then go do the things that I genuinely enjoy doing.
Yeah. And, we're all here, be very clear, we're all here and doing a business because we have a deep purpose typically, but we also need and want to make money. We can't ignore that. And if you say you don't want to, like, okay, that I'll let you kind of deal with that. It's probably more childhood trauma. But
Yeah.
The big question, people are like, well, I work harder, I make more money. And the real truth is if you work harder, a lot of times that's draining you and you're making a lot less money. And it basically just puts a ceiling. And I had this glass ceiling. My personal income was $10K a month, and I had that glass ceiling for years. I could not break through. I created my own glass ceiling. It's not just corporations that do that. We do it to ourselves. But when I started to step into the things that were joyful for me, my energy goes up. I lead better. You show up every day better. You show up. Guess what? Your customers, and I learned this the hard way. Your customers see the joy or the angst in your face.
Yes.
Have you ever been to a restaurant or a coffee shop or anything, and there's this frantic person running around in the back, and you're like, wow, this place sucks.
Oh, yeah.
And it has nothing, maybe the coffee's amazing, but that person's stressed.
Energy is everything.
Right. Absolutely. And so that equates to that client sees you happy doing what you're doing, they're going to come back. That employee is going to enjoy their work. You're giving them purpose. Ask yourself this. This is crazy. A lot of people are like, what's the benefit? What were to happen if your business went away? It was like, well, I wouldn't have the money. And a few, 5 people would lose their jobs or whatever the number is, right? Actually, what happens if your business went away is that girl that you hired that's a high schooler making coffee who's being abused at home might have to go home more frequently, might lose some of her confidence. You could actually keep her from taking her own life because you're breathing life into her through a thing called work. You're giving her confidence. You're smiling when you're working with her. You're mentoring her. You're showing her how to address clients. You're showing her how to believe in herself and stand tall. And people are saying, you're doing an amazing job. And her whole life, she's being beaten. And she's sitting there. So, like, seriously, there are lives on the line for your business that you have.
Yeah, I
I have my
absolutely
my
love that.
coach. My coach walked me through this. He says, what's the impact that you're having? I'm like, for business owners. And I said something. He's like, and he walked down this road, and I was like, this is amazing. So for everybody out there that wants to start a business, is in a business, whatever, walk through that, the impact that you have, and you will have 100x that impact if you have energy while you're there and you're enjoying what you do. And you can't force yourself to enjoy what you do. You have to be brutal. Write down everything you do in a day. Oh, I just answered emails. Oh, I just sent an invoice. I just answered text. I just called this person and scheduled. I just replaced this person. Do an audit. Like, do a week audit and be brutal every single thing you do. And then at the end of it, look at all those things and circle everything that gives you energy and put a star next to everything that you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I never have to. I would be so much happier if I never had to do that again. And then hire ruthlessly for those pieces.
So yeah, I love tangible homework. So that is your homework, guys. Like seriously, it's going to be hard to even track it, but hopefully by this time next week you have someone, you delegated someone tracking it for you. That's the goal.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to talk about is you might have this, a barista or whatever you guys call them, who's amazing. Just amazing. She's great with the clients. She makes great coffee. She always shows up on time. In our heart of hearts, what we want to do is we want to give her more work because she's amazing. We love her. Maybe we were going to move her up to management. Maybe we're going to make her our social media manager. This is the mistake of business owners all the time. And we're like, hey, you're so good. Would you like to earn some more money? Well, yeah, I'd love to earn some more money. I'm going to have you do this. And she does it. And then a year later, you notice that she's like, hey, I found another job. I want to get my 2 weeks notice. You're like, what happened? Well, what happened is you saw greatness in her and you instilled what you didn't want to do into her. And now she's leaving because she's not finding that joy that she found before. And she might not even know how to identify with it. And so one thing I would like to tell people is, and you nailed it, Destiny, is give people work that is within their working genius. What gives them energy? What fuels them? What are they naturally good at, but not just good at? Just because they're good at it doesn't mean they like it. So really be in tune with that. And so that's why, like, when someone calls us to hire a social media manager and they're like, hey, I'd also like them to do bookkeeping, I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, look, a social media manager
That is left
loves
brain and right brain.
loves creating. And sure, do you have SOPs? I have total SOPs. Someone just needs to follow the process. I'm like, you're going to completely steal that person's joy, and she's going to do a horrible job at your social media because half the time she's doing bookkeeping. Treat it the same way as your local staff. You're on,
Yep.
and then find the right person, whether you use a service like ours or hire local. Find that person that gets joy and is good at that role, and your business will thrive. I hired a bookkeeper. And I've always wanted a really cool, super in-depth budget. I didn't even ask her. Like, after 2 weeks, she came to me and I want to present something to you. I'm like, okay. She had all of 2024 up until that date dialed in. Here's how much per month on average you do this. And she said, and these are the percentages. And if we do this percent growth, this is our 2025 budget. And I can give you over and unders for every single month in every single one of these categories. Is that something you'd like? I'm like sitting there dumbfounded going, I
Yeah.
admire businesses that have this level, and I never knew how to get there. Well,
Yep.
I would have never got there if I tried to do it or I tried to force somebody to do it. I found somebody whose working genius was that, and she brought it to me. That's the magic of finding the right person.
That's beautiful. We've created a culture too. And I look at our team, like we always say, like A- people could never hang with our team because we literally have all A pluses. But it's because Eric and I have very common conversations that are like, what do you love to do? Like what, not like on the weekends, your hobbies, but like what do you enjoy doing? Is it creating, or is it customer service? Is it serving, or is it behind the scenes? Are you analytical and love computer work? And we place accordingly to those gifts and those talents, because one of the best things that I think it was a Breyer, maybe it was Meyer Riggs or Breyer, whatever the personality test, that what is it?
Myers-Briggs. Yeah,
Yes,
I don't. Yeah, I can't get it.
Yeah.
my maybe, but it tells you your strengths. And
Mhm.
so it says focus so much on your strengths that you don't even look at your weaknesses. And all of a sudden, you're placed in positions that amplify those strengths. And so that's what we always try and do. And if you look at our team today, they literally love their job. But why do we do that? Because we know it's a direct effect to our customers. We have okay coffee, but our customer service, you will not find another coffee shop with better customer service than us, because we breathe life into our baristas and anyone who's on our team. We're literally family, but it's because they're happy, and we know it's a direct effect of how our customers are going to feel.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and that's what makes a winning team,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everybody on that team affects another person. And by the way, my in-laws, I give them a bag of your coffee, and they're like, "You can never run out of that." Like, okay.
Yeah. No, I think we have fire coffee, but we look, we have this organization now, kind of talking about your previous point, is like the financial piece, it's a metric that we gauge and we make sure that it is moving forward, but that's really not where our focus is. Our focus is providing opportunity for others, and we figured out a way to do that on a national level. It is so amazing to go sit down at a dinner or something and say, man, you look around the table and there's 10 lives that I have changed. And you say, that's where I find real purpose at. You know what I mean? So it's so beneficial.
Yeah.
So it's a long term, it's a long play game. And the reason why delegation and systemizing is so important is because if we want to serve long term what we're created to do, that we have to learn how to systemize so we don't get burned out. Because if you look far, there's so many lives that we still, that is in line for us to touch, that we can't get to if we're just grinding, or if we get burnt out, or if we don't look up and see that we've wasted our time with our own kids trying to breathe life into them. And so that's why this stuff is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, I'm wholeheartedly on
Yeah.
board, and I think it's just really takes a lot of self-reflection.
Hmm.
So, business owners just have to stop and do some self-reflection. It's like the homework,
Yeah.
the self-audit. But like, look, I do that audit all the time. It's not a one-time thing, because we don't grow if we're not reflecting and looking back. And if we're not reflecting and looking back, we can't provide a better working environment for the people that are working for us. And then what are we in this for? Other than money, what are we in this for? We have such a huge impact. And it may not be as drastic as a girl who's being abused at home and wants to take her life, but it may be these micro things that you're changing in the world that create macro effects. And I think we all have to keep a hold of that, because there's so many things as business owners that'll beat you down. Someone's complained, someone does a bad review on Google, somebody shows up and makes a fuss, an employee no shows. All those things are super easy to focus on, when really we should be focusing on these little micro waves that we're creating, these ripples that we're creating, that are creating these massive changes over time.
So we got a few more minutes with you. If our listeners are like, okay, I'm ready to delegate. Did my self audit. What's some of the things what's the next step?
Well, one, get an appointment with us and call us. I mean, because what we do is we ask questions. And so a lot of people will bring a list of 400 things that they want. And I'm like, well, one person can't do all of those. Maybe they can, but they won't do it well. Right.
That was Eric.
But and so we have to have a reality, like what kind of role is the top of it really rises to the top. A lot of times it's just that person that's really helping the owner directly and making a direct impact in their life personally and in the business. That's an executive assistant's great at that. Like, oh my gosh, I got this company dinner. Please find all the restaurants and schedule the one that makes the best sense, or whatever. Or book this flight for me. Basic stuff like that. All the way to bookkeeping and social media management. But get all that stuff down, and then let us identify the skill sets. And be like, hey, here's where you're going to get your most return on your ROE, your return on energy, right here. Like, that's the person you should hire and start with. So we listen, we help decipher what role is best, and then we recruit. We present our clients with like 3 to 4 candidates. They get to see them, hear them through video. There's a lot of steps that we take in the meantime. It's not a very fast system, but it's very thorough. And then we allow our clients to interview with them and pick who they want, and then we just move on from there. But it's just make that connection. I know that you'll have a link or something. Reach out to Destiny or Eric. They got it all figured out.
For sure.
For us, and if it's not a good fit, we're going to tell you. Like, look, you're expecting too much, or you don't have enough right now. Like, we'll be brutally honest. And I think that's what businesses need. They need people that are willing to help, whether it's getting the business or helping them in another way. And that's the way I built my company. Is like, look, if it's not a good fit or if it's not the time, my sales guy, Ashley, is going to tell you, hey, like, right now is not the good time. Let's talk in 6 months when you're a little further. And that's something I value very highly. So you're going to get the truth from us, and it's that help first mentality.
Yeah, I love that. And then Scott has also been somebody that we directly work with, you know what I mean? So we've had a great experience. I mean, his team is great, handles everything from A to Z, and if you need any assistance or, looking for that service, if not, keep him in mind and then follow him as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that would be great.
All right. So you are a beautiful display of our core values, which is love others, spread light, and of course, work hard. And so we're so grateful to have you on. And I think there's going to be so many knowledge nuggets in this. And yeah, we'll definitely have you on again because you are a wealth of knowledge in so many other aspects too. So, all right, guys, until next time, no grit, no pearl.
See ya.